My name is Chandon Williams, and I'm an acupuncturist, and I have been for some time. Massage therapist before that, and today I am interviewing retired massage therapist and star acupuncturist Nicole Lund. So Nicole, I know you've been in the wellness for a while. What year did you get started?
Oh, goodness. I got started as a massage therapist, I think it was 2002, 2003.
Yeah.
So I've been in this world for a long time.
Yeah.
A long time. Yes.
And what got you started, and then what keeps you going for this long?
That's a great question. I feel that what got me started is just this desire to help people. I was an elementary art teacher, so I've always enjoyed working with people, but I knew that there was something that was just drawing me to that body work and working one-on-one with people. And when I started as a massage therapist, I just thoroughly loved working one-on-one with people. I love hearing people's story, what brought them to this place, and then what role I can play in helping to support them to get to wherever it is that they're wanting to be, if it's pain-free or, whatever that might be. But I loved being able to be a tool in it. And I think the thing that has really kept me going is I love the puzzle aspect of people. And I always tell my clients, we're all layer cakes, right? When it comes to whatever our issue is. And some of us have more layers in our layer cakes than others. And I just love helping people figure out what it is that we need to put together for them in order to get to that place of feeling better in whatever area that might be.
So layer cakes.
Layer cakes.
Do you ever feel like there's someone that's too much for you?
That is a great question. And I feel like they may be not too much for me, but I realize that I can help them with this one piece. And that I want to do everything I can to help them within my scope of practice and staying in my lane, and then being able to help them find resolve in whatever that might be, like less pain or less anxiety. And those things then might open up the door for them to be able to address a different aspect with a different provider. And that's why we're always happy to refer out. But I think that with acupuncture, there's always a way that we can help people.
Great. So I don't know if anyone else knows this, but I know this about you, that you're not only an acupuncturist, but you're a medical intuitive, which means different things to different people. I'm sure people think of the medical medium or something like that. Celery juice. What do you feel like is a misconception about being a medical medium? And then if you could tell us a little bit more about what it means to you, but I'd be curious to know, like, what do people get wrong about that title?
So in order to answer that question, I think going back to a little bit of my background and how I got to that might help to sort of explain or to answer that question. Even way back as starting as a massage therapist, when working on people, I would just get information. And at first I was really apprehensive about sharing some of the things that came through, because that's not why they came to me. And I didn't see that as my role to sort of share that. But then I realized, this isn't for me. So I need to just share what's coming through for individuals. And a lot of times it had to do with things regarding emotions. And so it kind of just took off from there. And that led me to going into this deep dive of understanding the effect that the emotion aspect of self, how that affects the physical body. And now I'm at this point where I think if we're only treating the physical body, we're only treating half the person. And that the emotions that we carry have a big effect on our physical health. There are studies now, it's a form of science that's psychoneuroimmunology, the idea that they've been able to map from a physiological standpoint of how our thoughts do affect the physical body. And so to me, tuning into that information that I was getting from people and then sort of being able to do a deeper listen into the emotions that may be affecting the physical health, to me is this sort of sweet spot that isn't something that people generally think about when it comes to physical care. And that is one of the things that I appreciate so much about Chinese medicine, is that it does acknowledge the emotions and how they are connected to the different meridians of the body. So I got to take that experience from working as a massage therapist. And then when I started training in acupuncture in school, it all just kind of started to make sense, how Chinese medicine recognizes what I was already kind of picking up on when working with the physical body. So now I'm thinking about what your original question was about, maybe what people get wrong about or misconstrue about the idea of
like it
a
sounds
medical
woo-woo,
medium.
or it sounds like you're a witch.
Which I can, some people may think that, but I would take it back to that idea that, especially as acupuncturists, we're tuning in many different ways to the physical body in order to get information about what's happening. We're looking at the tongue, we're looking at the pulse, we're looking at the facial features, just the shen in general, just sort of that energy that's coming off of a person. So as humans, we're always taking in this information from another human. Like you might be around somebody and just be like, I don't know what it is about them, but I don't like their energy. So we're just not taught that we have this ability to tune into the physical body in ways outside of the standard 5 senses. And that's what I work with in that medical intuitive aspect, is listening to the body and what the body has to say. And I'm a firm believer that the body is this miracle and it has this innate intelligence. And so if it has this innate intelligence, why would we not want to be listening to and taking directive from this innate intelligence that is this miracle of the human body?
So then how does that translate into a treatment? Like, you're picking up on things, then you may or may not share or get permission, or do you give people homework or tell them what you're sensing and then turn that, like, what could someone expect then from receiving acupuncture with that medical intuitive twist?
So every session is different. I will say that, because every person is different, and it depends on what you come in wanting to work on. So let's say that you are wanting to work on like stress. So in Chinese medicine, we see that stress is sort of connected with the liver meridian itself. So as an individual coming to work with me, I'm going to use my foundations of Chinese medicine. I'm going to listen to your pulse, right? We're going to look at your tongue and take in that information. But when I listen to the pulse, I get additional information from individuals, which a lot of times will kind of take me below that surface level of stress. So like recently I had an individual that I was working with, and they just said, kind of like general health, or, maybe some stress or something like that. And then when I was tuning into the pulse, it just was, to me, the information came through that it looked like some choice or decision that they were needing to make that might be adding to some of that stress. So I just, based on what I hear in the pulse, I just ask, like, any chance that you might be in a place where you're having to make a decision. And then the person was like, actually, yes, I'm working on a decision. And so that to me sort of helps guide how we're going to work with that treatment, because stress is an emotion or a state that we see connected with the liver. But then the gallbladder is, in Chinese medicine, we see about an inability to make decisions. So not only am I going to help this person with the liver meridian of reducing stress or releasing some of that stress, but we also want to help support that gallbladder meridian, because that is a way that we can foster a greater ability to make decisions. So to me, that is sort of how going that little level deeper and listening sort of that intuitive place of what the body has to say or what the spirit has to say, that kind of helps guide what it is that we're going to work on, or how I'm going to best support what it is that is their chief complaint for that particular day.
So you'll work on kind of what they want to focus on,
Yes.
but then based on some of what you sense, that'll also help you pick the points,
Yes.
essentially? Okay.
Exactly.
Pick the acupuncture points?
Yes. And then another person that I worked on recently, anxiety was one of the issues. And in tuning into the pulse, it was just, it's so funny because it's so obvious when listening to the pulse, but there was a lot of anger, actually. I could sense a lot of anger in that anxiety. And normally I love working with anxiety, because to me, I see anxiety as it's sort of this blanket emotion that people are experiencing, or a state that they're experiencing, which I think comes to be a lot of times when there are deeper emotions that we might not be able to connect with or be ready to process, but those emotions are building and trying to come out. And so sometimes we just experience anxiety because it's allowing us to get something out or bring it forward when we don't exactly know what might be underneath it. So this particular anxiety that I was tuning into, there felt like a lot of anger underneath that as well. And, you know, I'm always going to ask my clients if this resonates. And for this person, that made sense. And they'd said, oh my God, I never thought about it that way. But yeah, there is an anger component to it. Okay, so yes, let's work with anxiety, but how are we going to best support you to help release some of this anger from your system? And so I then tune into the body, and again, working with basis and foundation of Chinese medicine, but then also the intelligence of the body, and the body will just kind of light up the points that are going to best support that releasing of anger. So again, it's this cool puzzle, and using the intelligence of the body, and then like what my clients are wanting to work with at that time.
Yeah, and I feel like you do get a lot of clients that like to kind of talk through things and share things. Like, do you feel like you have to talk through things in order to make a change? Or like, what if I don't really want to like talk about X, Y, and Z?
That is such a great question. And we're not always going to be coming to acupuncture for, emotional states. It might be you have back pain, okay? So we're going to treat the back pain. We're going to treat the muscle tension and tightness to help release it. But then also too, I'm going to be listening to your pulse. Is there anything underlying that we can be working with? Is there stress that is a component to this upper back tension and tightness? Am I sensing worry in the pulse? Because the pulse will show us worry. You get this little tick-tock in the pulse. And so back pain, yes, but then let's support some of this. Maybe if there's a lot of mental chatter or a lot of worry that's going on, because it's the chicken or the egg. I always say, is it the back pain that's causing tension, tightness? I'm causing the tension and tightness, but is it causing some stress and some worry about what's happening? Or is there stress and worry that's happening in your life, and then as a result, the body is kind of tensing as this protective mechanism for what's happening? So again, we want to treat both parts of the person, the physical and the emotional, because to me, you can't separate the two.
What emotion what's up with low back pain? Like what emotion do you find most connected to that?
It's going to be different for everybody, but in general, I would say that there is two different things. You would think like carrying the weight of the world would be on your shoulders, but I also see people who are under immense stress. And a lot of times when they feel like it's all on them, then I see that showing up in the low back. And then also to fear, because fear is the emotion that is associated with the kidneys. And just, thinking about location in the bodies of where our physical kidneys reside, that is an area that I would be looking at for the low back. And a lot of times if people are like, oh my gosh, I threw my low back out. Recently I worked with somebody, I just threw my back out. And then I kind of picked up on some stress in the pulse, and I asked, like, are you under, any extra stress right now? And then it was like, oh, there's this and this and this and this. Like all of these things are happening. So let's support that aspect with you as long as we're going to be needling the back. Also too, upper back is kind of the backside of the lungs, and lungs are associated with grief in Chinese medicine. And that is an emotion that I think is so under recognized and under supported in our culture, because grief is looked at just the idea that, the unfortunate times when we've lost a family member or even losing one of our pets, we are in grief, and that is accepted and recognized. But there are so many other things that we grieve in our lifetime that are outside of those two things, like that it is important to be able to sort of recognize and put word to and support. Like if you're going through a breakup or a divorce, that might be a big source of grief for this individual, of not seeing my life pan out the way I hoped it would. Or, if we're working with fertility and you're going through a miscarriage, of course there's going to be grief. But what about even having grief prior to that of, I'm not able to be a parent when I really, really wanted to be a parent. So to me, working with grief is something that has been very freeing for many of my clients. And again, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not saying that you're going to come in and we're going to talk about all your feelings and problems and we're going to solve that. That is not my scope of practice, but supporting the meridians that are associated with those emotions is a great way to kind of unkink the hose in a way, so that it might be easier to cry, or it might be easier to, speak to your therapist about things that have been bottled up, or maybe it allows you to have a conversation with somebody that in the past, maybe it felt too overwhelming to be able to have this conversation with people. So it's our way through Chinese medicine to support this person in being able to release and thrive in areas that may have not been there before.
How do you think people should be using acupuncture in their daily lives?
Ooh, well, I think people should be using acupuncture in their daily lives as a form of self-care, because I think so many people come to Chinese medicine as the result of, I'm in a state, I've exhausted all other opportunities. Why don't I just give this a try, right? And then they find that they get great results with Chinese medicine, but then, well, my back feels better, so now I don't need this anymore. And I look at it as kind of like going to the gym. Once you achieve your goals, okay, I've lost the 20 pounds that I wanted to lose, you're not going to stop doing the things that got you to this place of feeling better. So doing acupuncture on a regular basis, even if it's every 3 weeks or once a month as that maintenance care to just keep everything unblocked and flowing and feeling good and supported, I think is the best way to utilize this medicine, and then preventing you from having to get to those places where things are in that really like acute state that you're needing this like sort of urgent care from us. And my mom is why I got into acupuncture originally. She was in that same state, was dealing with an issue no one could figure out. Last resort, tried acupuncture, and magically something that wasn't supposed to be able to be treated was treated and felt better. And so now she has been doing acupuncture once a month for, I think, probably 25 years now. And to see how vibrant she is compared to other people her age,
Yeah.
sold. I was like, yes.
And what do you think all this anxiety is about? I feel as an acupuncturist, I would say more people are anxious than not when we're doing an intake. That seems to be a common thing. Like, why do you think people are so anxious these days?
I think people are anxious these days because I think we're so out of balance, honestly. In two ways. We have so much on our plate, so much responsibility of having the full-time job, having the children, taking the children to sport, and then having to also care for your own self. And at the end of the day, the average person is pretty exhausted, right? So there's this never-ending to-do list. And then also that never-ending to-do list separates us from living in our circadian rhythm, in that rhythm, that natural rhythm of a human who is connected to the earth. So we aren't getting our morning light. We are not getting our daily movement, and we aren't having those one-on-one connections with community and loved ones at the level I think that we actually need to be healthy and happy as a human. So we're just getting bogged down, and then also not being able to refill in a way that actually sustains us. Because how many people have, at the end of the night, they collapse on the couch and turn on their favorite show as their way to like recharge their batteries. But that's not how a human, I believe, actually recharges. And so to me, that's where this just never ending list and burnt out feeling. Then, as I said before, that anxiety, I think, is accumulation of a lot of different emotions that we can't necessarily put our finger on, or do not have the capacity to even go there, right? And so that's where I think Chinese medicine, again, is so wonderful, because we look at you as a whole, and we're treating the whole and helping the entirety of the human to balance. And if we could do that in our everyday life of finding more balance, I think that we would have less anxiety.
So you said the word recharge. Obviously, it sounds like acupuncture.
Yes.
We might be biased.
Yes, extremely.
But in addition to the acupuncture, if people could do one thing today to recharge and restore, like, what would you guide people towards?
Well, I would say sunshine and sunlight, but Josh already used that one as his one. So then I'm going to use this opportunity to talk about a different one. And for me, it is meditation. I think is huge. And it could be meditation, it could be prayer, it could be mindfulness, or I even say any activity that you do where you lose track of time or don't want to stop. That too is you almost go into that meditative state. But our world is so outward facing, and we are so programmed to think that all of our answers are coming from the outside, when I feel that connection with self. And we talked about the, innate intelligence of the body, but I also feel that same thing happens when we have that quiet time or introspective time with self, because we are a wealth of knowledge if we just allowed ourselves to tune into that thing that is bigger than us, however you see that. But the thing that makes us tick, I think, is a deep well of wisdom. And the more we can tap into that, not only does it help regulate the nervous system, like prayer, meditation, or chanting, anything like that. So from a physiological standpoint, it does help the body balance and calm. But I just feel that quiet time with self is so rich. And I always say meditation or prayer, whatever you want to call it, is kind of like couples therapy with yourself. It's having those like introspective thoughts that lead to really great connections. You kind of start putting some of those pieces of the puzzle together, and it's downtime. And the interesting thing is that we're so connected. We just have media, TV, phones, everything coming at us constantly. And last year I did this challenge of 30 minutes of quiet each day, which you wouldn't think that 30 minutes of quiet seems like a long time, but it was, of no stimulus. Like, I just would sit outside for 30 minutes. And surprisingly, it allowed me to feel less engaged with social media. I don't know how that worked, but ever since then, I have not been engaged with social media, which I also think helps to center the self when we're not so influenced or interested in what is coming at us versus what is within us.
I like that. Mm-hmm. So I have a question about meditation. Even though you're an acupuncturist, I feel like you're a spiritual acupuncturist of sorts.
Thank you.
And I know you've done extensive meditation training. I hear from people sometimes, like, I'm bad at meditating. I just sit there and think, like, it feels like it does more harm than good, and it just annoys me, or whatever. Like, what do you have to say to people who are saying, like, they're not good at meditating and that's why they don't do it?
I think so many times people think with meditation that I'm supposed to go into this, instantly be in some altered state, and my mind just goes blank, and I'm just, this ball of bliss. That's not necessarily, I think, what the intention is with meditation. Even if you sit there for 20 minutes and your mind is going in 10 different directions, I feel like it's kind of a sifting and a sorting. It's just allowing the mind to kind of, how would I say that, sort of discharge. And then the more you do it, the less of that monkey mind you're going to find. You might even have that 1 minute where things just kind of feel calm, and then the mind starts jumping back in. But to me, it is a practice, as they say. And I've been meditating daily for, since probably like 7 years now. And I will say, I came to meditation because I was emotionally in a really deep place. And it was the thing that...
What do you mean a deep place?
Deep place. I was in a very deep depression. And I knew that for myself, going the prescription drug route wasn't my first choice, which for some people that is very necessary, right? So I'm not saying no to antidepressants. I'm just saying, for me, this was the thing that kind of fell in my lap, and I thought, why don't I give this a try? Because I've tried everything else and it didn't work. And it allowed me to have that, again, kind of one-on-one time with self. And the amount of tears that I cried just in meditation, I couldn't believe how much was coming out. And I just felt lighter and lighter and lighter. And then from there, I just knew that this was something that felt really, really good, and that I don't want to be without. I would say it saved my life and it changed my life. It's powerful.
Yeah.
From my perspective and experience. Yeah.
So if someone's on the fence here about getting acupuncture with you, who is kind of the person that you help, and what would you say to that person that's considering coming in to see you?
I would say twofold. I would say the person who maybe you do have musculoskeletal or digestive issues, that you find relief from it, but then it keeps coming back, right? Because to me, when something keeps circulating, I can get better, goes away, come back, get better. And that there is that emotional component, because maybe we haven't worked with that deeper layer that can be sort of fueling some of that physical manifestation. So I would say that would be a person that I tend to do really well with and enjoy working with, that we can do both. And then also anybody who is going through times of transition. People do not think of acupuncture off the top of their head of, I am going through a divorce, I need to go get acupuncture. But times of transition, to be supported in that process, both physically and sort of mentally, emotionally, is very, very, I think, to be extremely powerful. And another thing is people who are just like, life is good, but I just don't feel as connected with my own self as I would like to. I know that's kind of a vague answer, but getting into those like little deeper layers and finding ways to kind of help connect some of those dots within self that have maybe felt a little disconnected are also things that I really enjoy helping people work with. And anxiety and depression and grief.
When you say times of transition, because I'll never be like, oh, I'm in transition. Like, I'll never have that thought. Can you say, okay, like these are 3 examples of being in transition?
Transition would be, one is for young people that nobody talks about. When you've left college and you're starting a new, like into your career, it's a really disorienting time of life. So I've worked with young people. I love working with young people. They're my favorites. And also, if you are going through a relationship, a breakup or divorce, that is a major, major life change. And then one that I think is very interesting also too is people who have transitioned into retirement. It's supposed to be like this prize of like, oh my gosh, I did it. I'm retired. But then also too, you're void of structure, which you've had in the past, and kind of looking to redefine who am I now that I'm not the lawyer or the nurse of how do I like find self again in that. Those are I think some big areas are transition or change.
It makes sense. Can I ask you one question about a habit I've noticed you have?
Yes, what's that? What, talking with my hands?
No. However, I've noticed you whistling. Can you tell us why you whistle through the halls of Isthmus Wellness?
Well, the thing is I don't realize that I'm whistling until like the other day you brought it up. But I love whistling, or when I hear people whistle, because that means you're happy. You never hear a grumpy, pissed off person whistling away. And so it just, of course, it will make me just emotional even thinking about it. But my dad is a whistler, and whenever he's like working outside or working on a project, he's always whistling away, and it brings me so much joy to hear him whistling because I know he's so happy. And so I always love to point it out to people when I hear him whistling. I'm like, you're happy. Yeah. So that's
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to make me cry. All right. Well, that is what we have from Nicole today. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yes, this was lovely. Thank you, Chandon.
Thank you.